jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Okay, so joining me is Daniel Nightmare Nerd Ryan.
Greetings, my fellow horror fanatics.
I don't know what's the weather like where you're at. It is raining cats and dogs here. It feels like the beginning of a murder movie.
Not raining, but it's definitely cloudy, overcast, kind of humid. It's fit for a Giallo. That is how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, Giallo. And
Giallo. Okay, thank you.
and so that's what's weird is like it's Italian, not Spanish, and yet at the same time still kind of that way you pronounce the L, like a Y. Giallo.
You say Giallo, I say Giallo. Let's call the whole thing off.
Oh wait, how about Jello? But then we're gonna make Bill Cosby references.
I was about to say it. Your words, not mine. You saved me the trouble. Me here playing 4D chess.
Jesus. This is just like the episode last night where we were talking Jeepers Creepers, and it was like I was just waiting for who was gonna bring up the filmmaker's pedophile history first. And do a art versus reality argument.
Yeah, Dr. Wolfula, one of my favorite YouTubers. He's all about horror movies, and he earlier this year, or was it last year, posted a review of Clown House, and he was making constant, very sarcastic references to Victor Salva, and just, I think that's the best way to do it, is don't take the man seriously. Treat him for the joke that he is.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, and many of these Giallo guys, which is a good segue for this, have
True.
been accused of being misogynistic. Some of it was valid. Some of it was they got a twisted mind and they just like seeing gore and.
Oh, gee, horror movies misogynistic. Who would ever have thought it? Perish the thought. Excuse me.
Well, to be fair, I mean, some of it is just concern of, it's clearly by people who don't understand any of these genres that they take movies too seriously, and it's like just because it's got something controversial doesn't even necessarily mean it's exploitation. It's just it's not your kind of movie. Clearly, it's just very violent, and go ahead and call us all psychopaths.
I mean, you cannot look at some of the cinematography of Giallo and say it's not an art form in itself. But you can look at some of the other stuff that was in there and say, yeah, that's pretty exploitative.
Mm-hmm. And if anything, they're at least just a B-grade movie that, with a capital.
Be visionary.
Yeah, by a visionary with a capital B. And it's like, okay.
Ed Wood would be proud.
Ed Wood would be proud. Scorsese probably jacked off too much to too many of these movies. There's plenty of other people who probably
also,
shouldn't
your words, not mine.
I couldn't resist. I always felt something was wrong with that dude. But I had trouble getting into these because many of these movies they weren't at my video stores really sucked in my area, so I did not see many of these. And cable TV definitely wasn't going to play too many of these because you edit it, then there is literally no movie.
Yeah, in a way, that's part of the charm of this particular subgenre is that sort of like the early days of anime when you had things like Speed Racer, where the ones that did hit U.S. shores were something so unique and different for their time that it left a lasting impact.
Totally, and it was at the right time, at the right audience, and I just acquiring them as opposed to just forwarding, your father or your uncle's antenna channel recording was also kind of a charm. I think that was definitely a charm with these kind of movies. Like, I've seen some Italian European movies be edited for TV, but very, very few. Like, they're more likely to do like a James Bond ripoff or murder mystery with an international star and air that because content aside, there's just not. It's probably cheaper to afford. While these Giallo movies are by all the big, indie acquired companies, and you really did have to seek them out and it couldn't. Sometimes you weren't going to be able to find it for years. It just wasn't available except
buried.
Bootleg. Yeah, and region restrictions and even the movie channels would show them very, very sparsely. Despite having all the time in the world and being uncut, they wouldn't play as too many of them, except like unless it was again like some of these Argento ones.
And these are the type of movies where editing them for TV, it really is an absurdity.
Oh yeah, could you picture Suspiria for TV? Why would you bother?
Not to veer off topic here, but it's a story from Bruce Campbell about how he actually took part in editing Evil Dead 2 for TV. For network TV, I mean, and it's never been aired. It probably never will be, but according to him, having to cut down on the over-the-top gore and some of the nudity and just focusing on the actors' horrified expressions, it actually made the violence more realistic.
Yeah, I would imagine it. Even when you take out a fear component of that, you're still going to have something that's freaky, and you're like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" And
I can totally see that with Giallo. There's you cut out the more over the top elements. What you're left with is actually something pretty semi-realistically violent. That makes it even worse.
exactly, because much like any serial killer movie, you take out the horror elements, it's still a crime drama or mystery movie.
In a way, it's almost like Looney Tunes. That it's better. it's better when the violence is done in such an over the top, cartoony way that this is unrealistic.
Exactly, and I mean, the people who get it, they get it. Those who don't get it, well, we can't help you. You and these aren't too bad a movie if you were to see it at an art house theater, especially when you see how Sage Stallone and Roger Avery and those guys were remastering something like Lucio Fulci's The Beyond. And I'm not going to mention that one because it's kind of gotten its due as one of the best Giallo movies, despite being roasted at the time. But I do feel like many of these Giallo movies that are looked down are either because I think Giallo kind of falls into a popularity contest, unfortunately. Some people are going to swear off certain filmmakers. They don't understand it. And it's like, well, Giallo is pretty much a build on to noir. It's really not a genre so much as just a style, and people like it because aside from it not being done yet, it was also just you wanted to see what I wouldn't say what someone could get away with content wise, but also just try something that whether it was mainstream or independent, you just didn't know what kind of a movie you were in for, and it was either going to really bother you or you were going to watch it with a bunch of film buff friends and be blown away by it and be like, oh man, we got to go to this art house theater way more often.
Because the thing with it is that as cheesy and gory and sexual as the movies often were, there's no denying that the way they were filmed really was, for its time, innovative. And it incorporated all these different styles like film noir, where like just the camera angles, the lighting, the close-ups, it was something so dynamic for its time.
Oh, absolutely. And I really did. Did you take any film courses, like just like movie viewing college courses where they showed any of these?
Honestly, no. I'm entirely amateur.
It's fine because I didn't learn shit at film school, but I mean, I was always puzzled as to why there was just a huge lack of Italian movies on all these stupid classes. You know, it's like you already have to get 3 hours in watching a movie that's either really good or really overrated and pretentious, and the European stuff. I mean, there was maybe one or two Costas Gavras or Coppola or Bertolucci movies, but there wasn't any of this, Giallo stuff. And I was like, okay, I always heard that those were well-regarded movies, so what the hell? Why aren't those on the list? Why is Big Lebowski and all these other cult movies on here instead?
Don't get me started.
No, it's fine. It just seemed like it was a popularity contest, and they just copied the IMDb top 250 instead of.
To be fair, some of the Giallo films, just the titles alone are gonna be something that'll keep off the list. Orgasmo, like Death Laid an Egg.
Yeah, some of the titles you could definitely not say is like just leaving it Italian.
And it's all the more ironic to me for the time period because this was at a point when pornos were still being shown in movie theaters.
Mm-hmm. And some of these do have some of those moments. Some of them were actors who, in between zombie movies, were also doing those kinds of movies, so under different names. But
and they were considered art, no less.
Yeah, Emmanuel. I've been listening to the Podcasting After Dark podcast, some older episodes, and they talked about how some of those movies premiered back in like mid '88, and they were just amazed that it was the first time when they see the content guideline, the first time they would see stuff like extreme gory violence or extreme or explicit sexual content. Like not sexual content, explicit.
and like anyone paid attention to that system even then.
No, of course not. They were waiting for their parents to go to bed so they could sneak in the VCR tape.
The number of guys of my dad's age group, I'm showing my age here with this one, who their own dad would sneak them into this kind of stuff just for a father-son bonding moment.
Yeah, and that was kind of also the fun growing up of James Bond movies. It's like, I'm seeing some adult content I probably shouldn't be seeing, but it's in a mainstream movie, so someone approved it.
Yeah, it's like my grandfather in his man cave in his basement with his pool table. he had these portraits, well, they're reproduction portraits on the wall, basically nudes, and it was his way of getting around my grandmother disapproving by saying, "Oh, this is art."
As if we had to. That is also another sneaky thing. It seems like you have to get away with photography or paintings to literally call it art. It's like, if you have to get to that point, then you really need to re-examine what art means. Art means it's something you can judge. When you can't judge it, I mean, and this is again what some of these slashers and pornos are accused of, is like, oh, I can't judge it. It's like, well, no, you can judge it. Did you find it exciting, so to speak, or did you find it a bore? Or tasteless to where it's not even trashy fun, it's just stupid. Oh.
And Giallo is in its own way an art form because, like I said, just they innovated so many like cinematography techniques that are so common today. But for the time, this had to have blown a lot of audiences away just to see the kind of stylistic choices they were making.
Stylistic, and I mean, like you say, it was kind of before Dogma 95, was taken up.
Yeah.
All these other just works where you're like, I can't describe it. Maybe I'm a bad critic because I don't get it. Or maybe they don't get it. Maybe they made shit up and maybe I can describe it. It's just that whole it's pretty much just like defending a good or a bad movie. You have to pretty much, is like, do you really know it all that well to even begin to form an opinion? And maybe you got to watch these a few other times. Like The Beyond, I'm going to have to watch it a few more times just to put up a review. But I already know it's my kind of movie, and I think I have enough to just say, hey, I really think this is a good movie.
Yeah, and sometimes you do gotta watch the movie over and over just to really get the depth of it. I guess just the stuff when you're blown away enough in the first viewing, there's a lot of stuff you will miss.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I would hope that there's enough to pick up on to where you're not just going to be a hack critic and just put the first adjective that comes to mind and say, go see it. You won't regret it. It's like, I think anybody can do a good job just explaining these kinds of movies to where it's not going to just be a violent argument even. I think it's just going to be a matter of, I like the twist ending, and people like them better. Like, it's kind of like with Hong Kong movies. I'm more likely to give those a pass than I will an American movie, because I know an American movie, budget aside and all that, they have no. I can tell when they've been dicking around. I can tell when they've literally wasted a superstar and given them nothing to do as either an actor or a stunt performer, and it's just like, okay, this
And
is garbage.
you can also tell when said superstar is phoning it in.
Yes, yeah, you always just get that general vibe of, oh, no one wants to be here today. And with foreign films, they cover it up better, and they also, it's like they know when to quit. It's like, okay, just stop, and then try every once in a while, reboot it, or just make it loose, just related in name only. Then no one will definitely not care. Just go and see it.
One of my favorite examples that I guess we can loosely tie it into Giallo, it's very much along the same lines, Caligula. I mean, Peter O'Toole was so blatantly shit-faced in all of his scenes, he just did not give a flying you-know-what.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of times you see him just glancing at the camera like he's saying, yeah, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure everyone learned from it, just because good or bad.
What they learned, we don't want to know, but...
Oh, well, no. I'm not even talking content-wise. I think it was also just be careful who your agent is, be careful who, just look. There's many people today who I see trying to get into independent film, and they get some of those actors who star in anything, is like, yeah, but those guys even have a limit too. They're still going to look and see, hey, who's funding that movie? They might have worked on another piece of shit I was on that didn't get finished, So, I mean, with these movies, like, they have, so to speak, they did have a lot of similar Caligula people where they would go from making a Escape from New York or Mad Max ripoff to, X-rated stuff, and then back to Giallo. Like, they were in all those free departments because it didn't matter. You could call them whores, you could call them mercenaries. They knew how to do all free categories and get them done on time and have fun with their style. I very, very much on Jesus Franco. I just feel like he just makes so many boring, sleaze fests and vampire movies. But I know some people will swear by him and say, "Oh, I like that one Dracula movie he did." So
when in doubt, go eat drinks.
Yeah, drink up or get a bunch of movie buds in the room and just get ready to rumble. So these ones, I think, stand the test of time way better than some of these stupid 80s and 90s, American slashers, because
I will agree with that.
Well, and because how many movies would you say you revisited and you're like, that twist ending, what were they thinking? And it's like these, like, part of the style, and just aside the ambiguity aside, you were just fine with the shocking ending. It's like, that didn't make any sense, but I want to watch it again.
It's in a way, it's almost like the precursor to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. That's an infinitely watchable movie.
Oh yeah, was he a fan of Giallo?
That part I don't know. I'd have to recheck again, but you could actually, thinking about it, you could see like almost the influence.
Yeah, I mean, there's especially the hallway scene alone with the fountain of blood. It has to be.
And with The Shining, much like Giallo, you can rewatch it over and over, and there's so many little things you miss that make you look at the movie and say, "Huh, maybe this is what really happened," or maybe that character was really doing this, or.
Had to. I mean, there's no way you're gonna pick up on the Native American house right away because they just really downplay it.
Yep. What that guy getting blown by the teddy bear means.
Yeah, I still don't know what that means, and I always forget about it until I rewatch it. I'm like, oh,
I'll have to explain it to you because I've read the book, but
oh shit. Okay, well, we will definitely have to.
but yeah, thinking in terms of that, like so much of Giallo, like the endings were ambiguous, kind of The Shining, but that is what makes them so rewatchable because you're trying to figure out, okay, what the hell did I just see?
Yeah, and then I wouldn't say you become insecure, but you do become is like maybe I need to start paying better attention. Maybe I need to, something's up that I gotta rewatch this.
And much like The Shining, like just I hate to be repetitive, but like just the techniques they used were so innovative. And one of my favorite aspects with Giallo was the way that they would frame the eyes.
Yes, I mean, hell, they're on the posters.
Yeah, I mean, as a lover of animation and Japanese anime, that's always a key element for different characters is how their eyes are drawn in a way that reflects their characterization. And when I look at that as a horror fan, I could see almost the Giallo influence on a whole generation of animators.
Yeah, there's definitely Japan is very Giallo inspired. Who knows? Maybe the Italians ripped them off. I don't know.
If anything, the Japanese went and took it even further. Like of all horror genres that I've watched, Korean and Japanese, those are some where I look at them and I feel like, you know what, I gotta turn this off. I can't take it.
Yeah, and you don't want to be closed-minded, and at the same time, is like, well, is it gonna make any sense? I'm gonna lose my credibility by turning it off.
And it makes me realize just what a pussy I am as a U.S. horror fan.
I don't know, man. You watch some movies that I don't think I could bear. I mean, I still haven't gone for any of those cannibal movies. I've just seen reviews, and it's like that's all I can take it. You guys got to the best moments. I wouldn't have even gotten past the 20-minute mark, let alone the 5-minute mark.
Well, with a lot of the cannibal ones, I tend to go in having done my research on them, and I walk in feeling like, I walk in feeling like, wait a minute, that's what they were talking about? Oh, give me a break.
And you can tell some of those guys, they just got a way stronger stomach, or just they pretty much had the MST3K Joe Bob mentality, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna watch this and hate myself even more, and my pain will be everyone's humor, and they will laugh at me, and I will have done my job.
And you know, I think even Joe Bob said the sawing scene from Terrifier was too much even for him.
Oh, it had to be. I mean, and at the same time, they're going for that aspect too, so it makes it even harder to critique. Because like they did their job, but am I the audience for it? Can I even give it a?
And it's all the more funny to me having met the guy who plays Art, because he's really a insanely nice guy in person.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I mean,
yeah, he's very down to earth. He's very appreciative of his fans, and we'd never met in person before. We only interacted via social media, but he recognized me on the spot.
Huh. And so, like, he saw you at the convention and asking certain questions.
Well, sorry to veer off the topic here, but I was in the line for his table to get autographs and whatnot. I shook his hand, and I said, actually, we've met before. And he said, we have? And I told him who I was, and he said, yes, I recognize you now.
Perfect. And that's a blessing. I mean, because it does get annoying when someone likes to troll someone's page or act like, oh, he never responded back to me. It's like, well, maybe he didn't know if you were serious or not, so why be better to be safe than sorry. It's like, I'm not going to reply to that weird looking, comment.
Somehow I've been spared that so far.
That's good.
Of course, now that I said it.
I mean, unless he wants to listen to this, I mean, many of the Giallo guys, I don't really see them at conventions. Like maybe on sparse occasion. I'm sure a lot of them did it back in the day. They would be at a comic book store.
Yep.
But
the convention culture is a more recent innovation.
Totally, and I mean it always went in waves anyway. They wanted to buy copies of their movies that everyone saw just to see what everyone else was seeing and how their general impression, or they were just in love with themselves and signing videotapes and DVDs
Or just
at the time.
desperate.
Yeah, they're desperate, definitely. So they were going to definitely be at a mom and pop or a Blockbuster video that needed some extra business. I got stories, not as many as others, but I'll spare even the name of that infamous celeb that was there.
And it was the days before the convention circuit. There was money to be made there.
Right, before everyone was trying to steal each other's traffic. And I think, in a way, Giallo, that's why it works. Everyone was leaning on the other and saying, "Oh, I see what you did there. So I'm gonna rip off your ending and then change it to this and this fucked up aspect. And so there you go. It's even more outrageous."
There was a definite of them kind of swiping off each other, for lack of a word. Maybe inspiring each other is more of a nice way to say it. But you could see a bit of a professional rivalry. They were like, "Oh, you did this. I'm gonna do it even worse."
And sometimes the worst might even make it appeal more. I don't know. Oh, so
upping the ante with each other.
yeah, I mean, I prefer that definitely over some of the other recent rivalries we've seen. Where they call them twin movies here in the States, but I'm sure I don't know what they call them overseas. But it was just more kind of just fun. See what Jackie Chan's gonna do versus what Jet Li's gonna do, and here, and
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Yeah, you got to have the Planet Hollywood trio, and then you got to have all their other knockoffs, and meanwhile, all the karate guys go straight to video and make just as big a killing. So, for better or worse. So these Giallo guys, we're talking with underrated, since many people know Argento. I'm going to mention a movie you were familiar with. I'm going to bring up Giallo 2009, which is a send-up of the genre.
Inspiration film.
There's that, and it pretty much got blasted, and it became better known for the behind-the-scenes bullshit versus what was on the screen. I actually had quite a blast watching this one. I don't think it's Argento's best by any means, but I would just still recommend everyone just check it out, especially because Adrian Brody is in a dual role as both the inspector and the killer, and I would have never guessed.
Peter Sellers type stuff.
Yeah.
Multiple characters each film.
It's funny how that is, because I mean, basically, it's a. If it weren't a Blake Edwards movie, you would definitely, it's just a kind of just mind blowing kind of moment, and they labeled it as torture porn. I think they were definitely going for the Saw crowd, but without actually showing a lot of that, misogynistic or messed up violence. Everyone just got so caught up in that the investors didn't pay, Brody his SAG card fee, and so then he blocked the use of his likeness in the posters until it was paid. So it's like people like to focus on the negative. I just go into the movie with an open mind and just try and say, even if it's bad, I try to see if it wasn't the worst of the year by any means. It was just a disappointment or a mild misfire. And Argento has a big enough resume where I can talk all day about it, and any lesser moments in his career I just gloss them on by, because for whatever reason they just don't stand out to me as a sore thumb compared to, say, maybe something that De Palma or George Lucas might have done. So when did you encounter this movie?
Honestly, not till probably about 10 years after it had been released. I didn't even hear about it when it was out.
Same.
I was only just really starting to develop my true obsession with horror. I've always loved horror, but I was only at that point where I was thinking maybe I could make this my life. So Giallo was not much of a factor for me. I was all about the Universal classics. I was all about the 80s slashers. Totally. But learning to love the different subgenres, I think on one previous podcast we were both in, I mentioned that I love Hammer, which I did not encounter till I was in my 20s.
Same. I didn't get into it till college.
Yeah, and I compared Giallo to Hammer in some ways in that they were willing to push those boundaries and to use just utterly gorgeous sets.
Yeah, they definitely had kind of a more theater approach where the staging and the actual set is the star, and I mean, then we get the stars for
That's why I compare it to The Shining, in that it's really the set is practically part of the cast itself.
Totally. I mean, because you watch these movies and you just really don't. You get way you know if you don't get it right away, it's probably your mood, because basically you want to also just give it the benefit of the doubt. Is like, this is kind of a spectacle of a different kind. This isn't like whatever new war movie or other spectacle historical epic that's out, and it's like, okay, well, you can pretty much tell within the first 20 minutes if you're going to like this movie or not, because it's all based on the attention with that and whether it makes use of its time. But with these, I mean, you're willing to just kind of sit through and just, aside from the bag of tricks, also know that there's going to be just something else that just
That'll
you're not
hit you.
Yeah, and you didn't always lose your lunch, but you definitely would have moments where it's like, man, I'm not sure I can recommend this.
Yeah, much of the Japanese movies, there are times where it's like, yeah, maybe you're pushing a little too far here.
Yeah, it'd be great if you cut out that one gross segment and everything else fine. I'd recommend this movie.
And actually, since we're talking about the 2009 movie, one of my favorite Giallo tributes, if you will, that I came onto because of Horror Block when that was still a thing, The Editor.
Oh, man. Yes, the Editor is the star of these movies.
That's such a fun, corny little tribute movie, and it's actually got some really great music for such a lame production.
Yeah, I mean, more or less.
The music, the scene in the bedroom with the shadow figure with the one eye showing, it blew me away.
Very much so.
But it's just fun how many little nods and winks they throw in there to someone who's seen Giallo, and you know it instantly. It's like Mike Myers with the Austin Powers movies. All those little cliches they paid tribute to.
Yeah, I mean, they before Tarantino was making a living doing such, is like, but those movies are definitely by people is like they flat out grew up on it. Circulated enough. Oh, so, and I'm gonna let you pick one. Just one that just stuck with you. Well,
let me think here for a second. Sorry. Honestly, I think it would have to be, being a true crime lover, for me it would have to be, it's not even an Italian movie, it's The Monster of London by Edwin, how do you say this,
Zibunek?
He's German.
Zibunek.
But the thing that I love about this is that it really kind of like coincided with The Monster of Florence, a real life Italian serial killer. And there's so many eerie parallels that you almost wonder, was there some inspiration going on there?
I mean, for more or less, that there had to be. And I mean, if they weren't inspired, they at least still got Ennio Morricone to score their movie.
How about you? Any particular favorites?
Always. I'm going to go with another one. Many of these are... I actually discovered this by listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight podcast. They brought up Stage Fright, 87 slasher.
Not a bad one.
Oh, you've seen that one. Okay, perfect. This one is pretty widely available, surprisingly. Like, there's been many DVD and Blu-rays of it, and it's on Walmart's Vudu streaming, where I saw it for free on there. But I didn't even see the poster until we started recording, but it just was one of those, everyone was talking about it, and I had heard the name and just loosely and a bunch of other movie suggestions, and so I was like, yeah, I gotta definitely check this one out. And I feel like it's just another perfect example of how to be larger than life and just have escapism. There's so much stuff. If you did it in an American movie, you would be like, "Oh, for God's sakes!" You know, if Roger Corman, did something like this, you'd be like, "Oh God, you didn't even bother. You didn't try." You know, because it'd be too cartoonish to the point of, yeah, no, that's just stupid. But here, there's enough life imitating art and all these stage actors. Back to the stage guys, you know, you know, being chastised and harassed by this killer, and the plot twist not adding up is part of the charm in this one. It just really, it just makes you just. It's the right way to do deception. So.
You know, some of these films, the twist ending is what they call a Russo swerve in pro wrestling, where where it makes no friggin' sense at all. Some other ones, it actually does when you. It can take you a while to think about it, for sure, but once you come back to it, you can see, okay, they did set that up.
Yeah, they totally did. It's just because, and most of these people, it kind of was their, so to speak, if not a Friday night movie, it was just their routine. It's like, hey, yes, they're showing this. I've heard good stuff about it. You know, so and so raved about it, and fortunately, Roger Ebert and other people were hard on some horror movies, but they seem to be pretty cool with movies like these because they were at least knew what they were going for and gave them the benefit of the doubt. It's like, okay, I don't get it. That's my problem. It's not awful. It's just viewer discretion advised. I definitely also. I just feel like this one is just so underrated for 1987. That's a big year, and to actually just go to distance and be comfortable doing its own thing was definitely part of the charm.
And that was actually a time when the excess of like horror in the 80s was starting to die off.
Totally. And before we get Wes Craven and other people just rooting it back up, we had just too many just copycats. Everybody's got to come up with the next.
Oversaturated.
And it is a shame because we cover so many cult franchises here, and so many of them are actually pretty good. When it boils down to it, it's just,
people get sick of it. You give them too much, eventually they're going to start regurgitating.
Yeah, what else would you want?
In the 50s it was giant lizards and giant bugs and whatnot, and then in the 80s it was these slashers like Jason and Freddy and Pinhead
and. Now we got superheroes. How long is that going to be before everyone is like, enough?
I will confess that one's lasted longer than I anticipated. I say that as an unabashed comic book geek. I love a lot of the Marvel movies, but it's a genre that I'm starting to feel like, how long are you guys going to keep going with this?
Totally. How many people are just going to get sick?
And it's my tremendous disappointment. We have not gotten, at least in the States so far, the really, really cheap knockoffs. We have not gotten a Pew Mayman yet.
And the Puma Man, yeah.
That was totally like, Superman in the late 70s trying to rip it off.
Yeah. And, everyone knows it, I guess, just from MST3K, but, everyone has to remember, this was a thing.
And I'm still determined to get that music as my ringtone.
I'm sure you could. Is it on YouTube somewhere?
It is, yes. I'm just a total idiot when it comes to that kind of thing, YouTube capture or whatnot.
Oh, it'd actually be a piece of cake. You just, I do this also with some of these Giallo type movies and other rare movies. You just would, if you have a download of the movie, you would extract the audio. Usually there's an option in QuickTime, or you can go on YouTube and just do one of those MP3, extract it by typing it into the URL and it downloads it to your server. But
I've only just begun to experiment with using clips for my own channel, The Nightmare Nerd, and I'm hoping it will help increase my viewership because up to now my channel's been very dull.
Oh, damn.
And hopefully I will get some Giallo going in there too.
I'm sure you can do it. I mean, more or less, it's also, I mean, I've been experimenting with this. I hired someone to do my theme song. It really is just kind of just, you set aside an afternoon and you just chug away at it.
Yep.
And only then from there can you say it was worth it and worth the trouble. Thank you for joining us then. And where can we find you on the interwebs?
Well, to give my plug, thank you so much for having me. As always, you can find me, The Nightmare Nerd, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. I've got a lot of content coming up, particularly now we're heading into Halloween, so stay tuned. As always, eat, drink, and be scary.
Alrighty, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a pleasant evening.
You got it.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah,
Tangents galore.
yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We
Ah,
gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
ah, ah,
all
ah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going
How
to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
It's time, let's check our queue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-last plot holes of gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.